So I'm going to, first of all, I didn't rehearse this too much because I'm working constantly on my business. So I want to kind of cover a bunch of different beats as we go through this. I don't really want to spend that much time talking about Ranker as a company because honestly, I think, when you're in a room like this, sometimes people come up and just do infomercials for their business, and I think you're going to get more out of sort of entrepreneurial stories than that. But I do think it's useful to just kind of go through what we do and where we've gotten as like sort of background information before I go into the entrepreneurial story kind of stuff. So the theme of this presentation, because I'm not young, I'm 49 years old and I started Ranker.
It's all relative.
Yeah, and what's really cool is looking around this room. There's a lot of different ages represented here, and I also have a feeling that there's that it's not just. So sometimes when it comes to like startup talks, it's all about these like venture-funded tech startups, but really entrepreneurship is everything from a coffee shop to Google or something like that. And I've done both. And I'll make sure we talk about both aspects of this. But yeah, the theme of this is old dogs can learn new tricks because I started Ranker at age 40 after already being an entrepreneur for 15 years at that time, and I kind of thought I knew it all, right? I thought, all right, it's time to just crush it. It'll be really easy going forward on this. I've learned a bunch of stuff. And honestly, what I've had to go through with Ranker for a lot of different reasons was at times brutal. And I think that often when people are talking about startups or getting interviewed about startups, it's like the tech writers will just write all the rosy, everything's just amazing and everything's going through the roof and everyone's getting rich. And the realities of life as an entrepreneur are so removed from that I feel like it's probably more interesting to talk about the ups and downs. So my background is I had started three different. I've been an entrepreneur since I was about 25 years old. I worked in the music industry at a couple record labels for a few years, and then I started three different businesses that were not like what I would call tech startups. This was in the 90s. This was frankly before the internet buzz kind of stuff became a big deal, but they were successful small businesses. And one of the things that you see as you do tech startups is that you don't get a lot of, when you're trying to raise money from venture capitalists, you don't get a lot of credit for just running businesses and having run a small business, which in itself is a really difficult thing. So I just like to bring up that small businesses are real businesses. I had a record store, I had a couple of music marketing companies. All three were going at the same time, which is something that I would never ever recommend to anybody. It is the worst way to possibly scale any one business, is to dilute yourself and do too many things at once. So I had these three businesses going, and then in 1999, when the first wave of the internet rush was happening, I also started a company called eCrush. We won't go into the story around that, but that seemed like maybe it was going to be a quick hit, easy thing, and it turned into a 7-year roller coaster ride itself. But I did sell the company to Hearst in 2006, and because we'd never raised a huge amount of money, I did really well personally. And so that kind of gave me the background to take a year off. I should have taken 2 or 3. And then I started this company called Ranker. So again, I'm just going to go into Ranker for about 2 minutes, and then we're going to talk more about the entrepreneur stuff. So Ranker, I guess a good way to see what Ranker does is if you could Google, like on your phones right now, best movies or best movies of all time, you'll see basically what we do. We have lists about literally tens of thousands of different topics, and what separates us from like a BuzzFeed, for example, is that we're really trying to have the definitive rankings of any topic, pop culture, sports, things like that people care about. And people come to Ranker and they vote on all the lists that we've generated. So we're kind of constantly crowdsourcing anything that makes sense to see in a ranking. And we launched the site way back in 2009. So what Mike was referring to is we've actually started to do this, I hate the cliche of hockey stick, but we have had all this crazy growth. In fact, I haven't even updated this slide exactly. We grew a little bit since this was done. So now we're doing, over 30 million U.S. unique visitors a month, over 50 million worldwide. We've got a lot of the coveted millennial audience, because nobody cares about anything else in advertising these days, but are you reaching millennials? So we're doing great. We've got 69 employees. We're doing 20 million a year plus in revenue, and we're profitable. So we've kind of made it at a certain degree, although you can never be complacent in our business. Ranker is about ranking just all kinds of things. We have content really for almost anybody looking at things. We've also done really well. Part of the reason we've grown a lot in the last 18 months or so has been that we finally figured out Facebook. Yeah, we came a little bit late to the party, and I'm going to talk. I wanted to bring this up. We have all these different Facebook brands. We have a total of 12 million plus Facebook followers. But one of the points I'm going to make in the talk I'm going to give is going to directly relate to kind of figuring out Facebook and having an inflection point. So what Ranker really is we're kind of the Gallup for everything else. Gallup's never going to pull the best fast food burger or the best East Coast rapper or whatever. So we do that. The last thing I'm going to say before I go into the story is that my mom has never been so proud of me as when she sat down kind of randomly without any notice watching your regular afternoon Ellen dose, and Ellen opened her show with a big ranker list on the screen of celebrities who should run for president, and guess who was #1 voted. So, you want to make your mom proud, get on Ellen. That's okay, so I've broken this down into 6 lessons about entrepreneurship that I have gone through a lot of ups and downs. And keep in mind that these are lessons learned after I thought I knew it all, after I've been doing this for 15 years. Lesson number 1, timing is everything. So, this is especially applicable when it comes to if you're trying to raise money for a startup, but it really applies to businesses of any size. You can sink or swim entirely depending on macro market conditions. I've had startups going in both of the major crashes that we've had. Right, we had one in 2001, 2002. We had another one in 2009. When I started Ranker, it was in mid-2008, and I thought, I just had a successful internet startup. Everything's going to be really smooth, it'll be so easy to raise money and hire people, and I've got a track record. It'll be 10 times easier than it was before. And, I made some mistakes hiring engineers, and the business took a little longer to launch than I wanted to. And then boom, the floor completely fell out of the economy. I ended up having to put more than 3 times the amount of personal cash invested in the business just to keep it alive. Ranker would be dead if I hadn't had a prior startup that I could kind of draw, funds from and start. And I will also say that Ranker might be dead if it wasn't for Pasadena, because one of our early, first of all, I raised money from friends and family, and I've got, my wife is from Pasadena, so I've got Pasadena relatives, but also one of our early investors was Pasadena Angels, along with Tech Coast Angels. And sometimes in the sort of high-flying startup world, those angel groups don't get as much credit as they deserve. And I think it's something to really think about, is that the local angel groups in LA, Tech Coast Angels and Pasadena Angels, are some of the biggest funders of startups at early stages we have in town, period. So anyways, timing is everything. If you don't time it right, it may be through no fault of your own, because how do you know when the macro economy is going to change? But there's also a timing factor when it comes to tech startups, and it comes to raising angel money or venture capital. One of the problems that you run into is everything goes in these cycles of 4 to 6 months of hotness. So when you're in 2008, it was people were building social networks for dog lovers, and everything on the planet was a social network, and that was hot for 6 months. And at the time I was starting Ranker, I was like, if I can get the thing launched, we can be like, I didn't really think it was this, but I was like, I can sell it as a social network for list people, and like, that wasn't the grand vision of what I wanted to do, but it was sort of the way to spin it into what was hot at the time. And then you go through like the app economy is hot for a year, and drones are hot for a year, and all this. The problem that you have as an entrepreneur is you come up with this idea, you're working diligently on it, but it's you and a few other people. And it doesn't always go as fast as you want it to. You're trying out minimum viable products that don't work when you do your testing. So you can't control the timing, and it's really frustrating because you will find that the hotness of an investment cycle is short-termed, and then when it goes away, it actually goes away even worse than before, because people are like, oh, we invested in a couple of those companies and they're tanking. So timing is everything, and I don't even have a great answer as to how to game the timing of things, but I can tell you that timing is everything. But also, your network is everything. This is something I had no idea about prior to Ranker. So here I am, I'm 40 years old. My other businesses that I'd started were all in the music industry, which didn't really apply to the tech industry that I was in now. And then my internet company, eCrush, was based in Chicago, and I was sort of the guy in LA who did a lot of the strategic stuff and big picture stuff. So I didn't have a network in LA. I was kind of too arrogant or clueless to network for that tech business. I don't really like networking, right? I don't like let's go to a networking group and let's network and stuff. That just seems like living hell to me, right? So I didn't do that. And when it came to starting Ranker, I didn't have a group of I couldn't take my people from eCrush with me. I had the non-compete or whatever agreements signed afterwards, and I also had they were in Chicago, so it wasn't easy to take them with me anyways. When it came to trying to hire entrepreneurs, hire engineers, I had no network of engineers to draw from. So I made I might as well have taken $300,000 of my own money and just lit it on fire, because I ended up hiring people who put me in the hole because I made the wrong choice, because I didn't have a network to draw from. So I learned this pretty quickly after about a year of realizing that I didn't have a network. I kind of dragged myself out of this do it all yourself mode, and I started joining and going to networking groups. There's tons of them here in LA, this one we've got this morning, but there's literally, if you go on a bunch of the local sites Built in LA, there must be 3 or 4 things a week in greater LA, constantly, year round. And there's, accelerators and incubators, all kinds of things that frankly, that we didn't even have, 7 or 8 years ago when I was starting this. And the way that networks help you beyond just, fundraising is obvious, right? Investors don't really like to meet with people that they don't have a referral from. So you got to network your way into that. But you find that once your company starts growing, you need a network of other entrepreneurs to sort of vet hires against and whatnot, because you've got all these resumes coming in, and you want to be able to go to somebody that you at least loosely know and say, was this person any good when they worked for you? There's so many ways in which networking is so important, and I cannot stress it enough. Most entrepreneurs are not born networkers. They're not born salespeople. They don't like to get out in front of people. They just like to get things done. But you have to kind of break out of that. So your network is everything. Except that pitching is also everything. So this is another thing that I had no prior experience to. When I did my past startup at eCrush in 1999, you didn't do PowerPoint decks. You actually wrote a business plan in Microsoft Word. I think you wrote it in Word Perfect or Lotus Notes or something. And I didn't get an MBA. I didn't know how to do PowerPoint decks and stuff like that, right? The stuff that you learn in MBA school is kind of not the stuff that tells you how to run a business, but boy, it's the stuff that tells you how to pitch. And there is almost nothing more important when it comes to raising money than pitching. I still to this day suck at pitching, and I'm better, but I'm still probably slightly below average. I have been at pitch competitions like Ranker. I've seen so many companies come and go in the time that Ranker was scrambling to try to raise a little bit of money, even though I was a successful 5-time entrepreneur. And here's these guys next to me on stage, and they've got a ukulele act or something, and they have this really well rehearsed pitch that they spend, literally hundreds of hours rehearsing and getting ready, and it works. It always works. There's so many people out there trying to raise money, and investors. There's money out there, but investors have a really short attention span. So I just cannot stress. Put the time, hire the designer, or get a friend who's a great designer to do your deck. This is the first year, 8 years in, I finally have decent PowerPoint decks, and it's because I'm not making them myself anymore. Pitching is everything. Rehearsing your pitch is everything. Honing your story into multiple different kind of here's a soundbite for an elevator pitch. Here's a 3-minute pitch. Here's a 20-minute pitch. Here's a leave behind pitch after I meet with an investor, because that deck that you send them has to have more readable things on it, because you're not there talking over it. Getting feedback from 20 different people about, does this make sense to you when you're reading it, and having both a thick skin on the rejection you're going to get, but also sort of a different kind of skin on taking feedback on, does your pitch make sense? Pitching is everything. Well, actually, another thing is everything. This is kind of wonky. I couldn't figure out a way. See, I'm not a good pitcher, so I couldn't figure out a way to make this shorter and pithier. But learning specialized skills cold is everything. Unless you're timing, networking, and pitching all killed, in which case you can probably afford to hire all the specialists. So, what I mean by this, Ranker would have died also if I hadn't said, uh-oh, we're behind, we're trying to attract visitors, there's no way in hell I'm going to raise money until we've got our first, say, 1 million monthly unique visitors. How the hell am I going to get those? What I did is I spent 3 hours a night, every night for 6 months, learning search engine optimization cold, because it was sort of the thing that I identified as something that we needed. Nobody else was going to do it. It was also something that you could kind of learn and you could read about, and there's lots of blogs to consume and you could test it. So I learned search engine optimization cold, and that frankly saved our ass and got us to a point where after a million or 2 million users, we could go out and raise money because we had a nice growth trajectory. I cannot stress this enough. As the companies, as companies grow, if you're an engineer, if you can code, that may be your specialized skill, and that's great, and that may be all you need. But if not, you're going to find yourself, especially if you've got a tech company, where you're going to have to do something on the bleeding edge, ahead of the competition, and you think that you can delegate it, you think that you don't have enough time because you've got a pitch, right? You've got, all these other things. You got to run the company, you got to manage people. You have to learn something specialized cold that is going to change your game, because you can't really count on employees to do that. It's the kind of thing that just a founder sometimes has to do, because it's just going to take a lot more time than a 40-hour-a-week person that you're putting on salary is going to do. And over time, I found that I had to learn other specialized skills. We talked a little bit about Facebook, right? So 2 years ago, Ranker, we were up to, I don't know, we were doing okay. We were up to maybe 15 million U.S. visitors, and 20 worldwide, 25 worldwide. We had a bit of a footprint. We weren't profitable, but we weren't hemorrhaging cash. We probably could raise a little bit more money if we needed to at a not that great valuation. But we were kind of stuck, and what we realized was that Facebook had sort of snuck up on us and become the front door to the internet. And I took my CTO and myself, and I said, look, you have to learn ad tech cold and spend a little bit less time on some of the other CTO kind of duties that you have to have as a CTO with a lot of different things going on. And I had to learn targeting audiences on Facebook cold. And we did that. I hate Facebook personally as a user. Like, I don't like it. Like, I don't like all the noise of all the stuff that you have on Facebook, so I kind of avoided it as a citizen, right? But we had to learn how to, adapt Ranker to being successful in the Facebook ecosystem, and I tried for maybe a year and a half to just say, you figure Facebook out. I don't want to do it. You use Facebook all the time. I don't use Facebook. You figure it out. And that just simply didn't work. I was sending the right people to that, and at some point, I just had to kind of learn it cold myself. I couldn't figure out a way to put everything at the end of this, so I put it at the beginning of this. But the other thing that is just, I cannot stress this enough, is that everything is, this doesn't necessarily apply to all businesses, but I think to some degree it does. But everything is changing faster and faster than it ever has. So just to give you an example from my business, even going back, let's say 4 years ago, getting traffic to Ranker was like search engines, right? You Google best movie. If we can rank for best movies of all time, that's a very powerful search term. That's like 250,000 people a month coming in on that page alone. So we'd done well with that, but it kind of stopped growing. When your business is dependent on a third party like Google, you don't always know what's going to happen with, you have no direct control over it. You're doing the right things, and at some point you start to kind of flatline. And we didn't realize for a year or two that the front door to the internet had really become Facebook. So 5 years ago, Facebook sent 5% of traffic to internet publishers. Google spent about 50, and the remaining 45%, there's a little bit on other social networks, but most of it was actually people opening up a web browser and typing in a web page, right? That's how the web started. Every year since then, Facebook has grabbed 10% of that market, to where Facebook now sends somewhere between 40 and 45% of the traffic to all web publishers. Google still sends like 40% of it. That leaves like a tiny sliver of people that actually open up web browsers and type them in. That's insane, that the entire way that people consume information on the internet can change that rapidly in 4 years. At the same time, programmatic advertising came, and in about a 4-year period completely changed the way that ad impressions for static content banner ads are done on the web. So that was a sea change happening simultaneously. At the same time, web browsing went from being 75% on desktop computers to 75% on mobile devices. That's another sea change. 4 years, you've got these and then people started using ad blockers in this 4 years. So you've got these massive, just dealing with one of those changes is a nightmare, right? You've got to deal with 4 different things to just have a web publisher. It's unbelievable, the rate of things changing these days. And you talk about disruption. Disruption disrupts startups. It's not just big established dinosaurs. So unfortunately, to be an entrepreneur these days, you just have to stay on top of everything. Retail is suffering now because Amazon's sucking it all up. It's like there's really very few industries that are completely safe from this disruption, and disruption is happening at probably a 3x faster pace than it was even 10 years ago. So lesson number 6, this is the last lesson. At the end of the day, if you can even make it far enough along to these things, you will read a lot of stories about startups that had, in 2 years they went from 0 to 60 and they sold for blah, 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 add a number of zeros to the end, and they had a huge success in a short period of time. The reality is that's probably 1%, 2% of all the funded startups, and a lot of times the reason that those people sold and had like a 3-year arc has a lot more to do with the first slide, which is timing is everything, than any great entrepreneurship skills or whatnot. So at the end of the day, and that's the asterisk, right? Maybe, because grinding it out isn't everything if either one of two things happens. You do become one of those lucky 1% who the timing is right, or your idea is so good and you execute on it so fast, or your network is so good that you're already connected to all the venture capitalists and the kind of people that need to give you the fuel to fund your dream at the capacity that you want it as fast as you possibly can. That can happen, but it doesn't happen for most of us, right? The other thing that can happen, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, is you can give it a shot for 6 months, 18 months, 2 to 3 years, and just learn that, look, it's not going to happen. Like, it's unlikely that you're going to raise the money that you need. It's unlikely maybe somebody else has come out with what you're doing. And, it's time to just stop and move on and try a new idea, or maybe, go back to a gig. But if you do stick it out, like if you get some funding or you get to the point where your business is sustainable, the reality is you've still got to just grind it out. You've got to just basically be prepared to spend, almost every waking hour. People are always like, work-life balance, The only way to recharge your batteries is to do a 3-day retreat once a month and just sit and do yoga and that way you'll be refreshed. And I mean, that sounds great on paper, right? We'd all like to be able to do that, but you can't do that when you're like, I gotta make payroll, I gotta raise money, or I'm dead. It's just like, you have to keep growing if you want to raise more money. And you don't, all these platitudes sound nice, but at the end of the day, you just lost this guy who did your coding and you got to step in and code. There's just too many things that are going to come up. You just have to be prepared to grind it out, and you're probably not going to have much of a work-life balance for a long time, unless you want to build what's called a lifestyle business, which is not like venture capitalists use this term lifestyle business, and that means a business that's never going to make them huge amounts of money and that I wouldn't invest in because it's not going to have a big exit at the end, right? I think lifestyle businesses are great because they can allow you to afford a lifestyle, and you can make good cash from a business. That's the way businesses used to work before this whole venture capital and investing and angel investing is everything. People would just build businesses, and sometimes they would turn into big businesses that would eventually go public. But nowadays it's like fuel the fire really fast and grow and get big because of all the other reasons we talked about, right? Because change is happening all the time, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, even when you have a lifestyle business, it's still subject to, you gotta have it become a self-sustaining thing. And there's an awful lot of change going on. And even if you say, I'm going to do a lifestyle business so that I can have work-life balance, there's a pretty good chance that something's going to go wrong, and you're still just going to have to friggin' grind it out. And that's just the sad reality, and there's no real playbook on how to grind it out. So grinding it out is actually really everything. So, what have we learned here? I don't know. Entrepreneurship is kind of awesome still, even with all these pitfalls and all these ups and downs. There is nothing like being your own boss, right? That's probably the reason almost everybody is in this room, is because they don't want to be taking orders from other people. They want to follow their own path. If you love what you're doing, it doesn't matter that you had to grind it out and that you had to learn how to pitch and that you had to, network, and all these things. It'll be fine. The ups and downs will make you still a happy person, and you won't, you'll make it in some way, shape, or form. You'll make it. If you have early success, if you're one of those 1% that everything just goes right, even if you hate what your business is, you just think it's a quick way to make a bunch of money, there is a chance that everything will be awesome for you, because you'll just catch that wave and you'll be that lucky founder who goes through that. The thing is, though, if you don't love what you're doing, and if you're just picking your entrepreneurial path for I want to make a buck, you have to kind of know, I'm trying to make a quick buck and I'm going to get out before it drags me down. Otherwise, you get stuck grinding it out on something that you hate, and then everything is not awesome. And then entrepreneurship kind of blows, and you find yourself in just years and years of stress and forgetting about living life. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be the anti-entrepreneur. I just want to paint a realistic picture of what it's like. When I sold when I sold eCrush, I thought this is cool. I'm not necessarily set for life, but I've just crossed this big hurdle of this huge amount of stress from all these businesses that I've been starting. And next chapter is chapter 2. 4 weeks vacation every year, I'll have enough money to hire in all the senior and specialized people that I'm going to need, blah, 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 blah. And that didn't happen. Timing came. Other things came. And, I would say that out of the 9 years since the ideation part of Ranker started, probably 5 of those years I was working almost every waking hour on the business. And there's no way that I could have gone through that after already having done startups for 15 years before that, if I didn't really, really, really like what I was doing and like the people I was doing it with and believe in the business. So, everything is awesome with an asterisk. That's really all I had. So I don't know if I went over time or not.
Thanks, Clark. I have to say, thank God for that concluding slide, because I don't know about you guys, but I kind of just was inspired to go home, turn on some Radiohead, and just kind of hunker down for a weekend or something, because that was a little bleak. But the reality is, a little bleak. Candid, right? I mean, let's be honest. It's hard work. If you're developing something, if you're getting into entrepreneurship because you think you're going to work 30 hours a week, you're in for a rude awakening. And it sounds like you're working on average 80, 90 hours a week, maybe even more.
Yeah, I was working literally, I think 80 is about as much as you can do and stay sane, and I was working 80 hours a week for a good 5-year chunk.
Yeah, and that's tough, but he's made it in ways. I mean, you have to keep sustaining it. It never really ends.
Down to 50 hours a week for the last year.
Sweet, American training. Anyway, it's a lot of hard work, and we appreciate your candid perspective and how everything is everything, and that's awesome. We're gonna open up the Q&A now. If you have a question, raise your hand. John will walk around with the mic. If you have a comment or a story that you'd like to share, please just save it for offline. Clark, will you hang out with us for a little bit for that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, absolutely. Cool. So if you have a story, let's save it for afterwards, okay? Thanks.
So obviously you've had a great deal of success in getting a system together that lets you, for want of a better word, do a popularity contest. What do people think is the best this, that, or the other thing? Do you have ways of more, well, I guess this is a two-parter. One is, do you use it for anything besides targeted advertising? And secondly, do you have a way of measuring merit in a more objective way than just people's opinion of it?
So those are good questions, and I didn't spend, I kind of specifically only spent a few minutes actually talking about Ranker the business, because it is kind of a wonky business that has a lot going on, and I wanted to get to the story more. But the answer to your first question is yes, we've actually got a second product. So Ranker makes most of its money to date on targeted advertising. But we have, if you go to rankerinsights.com, what we've actually built is second to Facebook, I would say the largest data set of people who like X also like Y, like psychographic profiling. So like fans of the TV show Modern Family also like the TV show The Middle, but they also like Chipotle, and this kind of a percentage index, which is data that's really valuable to marketers in this day. I don't know if you look at what Netflix does, but Netflix doesn't even care about demographics anymore. They've built their whole business on just knowing that people who like this kind of thing, doesn't matter where they live, what country they're in or whatever, they're going to like more of this other kind of thing. And we've got this very large data set that we're actually raising more money now to go out and do, because to sell that kind of a product is different than just selling targeted advertising. And so I got to go out and I got to do my pitching, which is something I love to do. So, and then, I'm sorry, what was your second question again? It was, oh, I know what it was. Okay, so, the whole reason of Wavemaker was kind of to have sort of opinion-based answers, because that was sort of the void in the marketplace. We kind of wanted to be like a Wikipedia of opinions using lists. So the answer is kind of no, I think. But we do have a lot of content that's just fun lists that go viral. All right. Sorry, we got a microphone.
Can you speak a little about your customer acquisition costs and the LTV, and what you do to lower your customer acquisition costs and what you can do to raise your LTV?
Sure. So we don't think so much. LTV is hard when you have a web property and not an app and whatnot. So we don't quite think about it in LTV. But of course, we look at the users that we have that are kind of coming back month over month over month. Customer acquisition costs, when you search, so Ranker's got literally 100,000 plus rankings of things, right? Google any granular movie, TV show, sports kind of thing, and we've got lists about it. So search engine optimization is sort of free, but it's not free, meaning that you have to spend a lot of resources optimizing your pages for searches and a lot of editorial time writing to those search engines. But once it works, you don't actually have a per customer cost. More of our customer acquisition costs tend to be baked into personnel. Like we have literally a 9-person social team right now doing Facebook posts across 12 different verticals. And so there's a labor cost there, but there's not as much of a cost. But we also do some paid marketing on Facebook as well to sort of boost posts that are doing really well and that can bring in profitable visitors. And customer acquisition cost on those is literally like a penny. But we use a ton of data to get there.
Back here.
Can you talk a little bit more about how you overcame your dislike of Facebook to actually learn about it and utilize it? I'm just sort of curious how you learned about it. What was really that hurdle that you were able to overcome?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And honestly, for almost anybody in this room, this is something that really, really applies. For better or for worse, Facebook is the greatest consumer data set in human history by a magnitude of probably 10. Google is a consumer data set in its own way, but it's very different. Facebook knows so much about everybody based on, everything that you like on Facebook is something that advertisers can target against. Everything that you consume on Facebook in an article sense is something that Facebook is going, consumed an article about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. Must be fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Every bit of demographic information, posting kid photos as kids, right? All this stuff. Facebook has sucked in all this about everybody in the world using Facebook. So then as a marketer, it's really not that hard. It seems hard because you go into Facebook for Business and Facebook Insights, and it's intimidating because there's a lot there, but if you literally just spend like a day kind of diving into it and reading blogs about it and exploring it, you can spend $5 targeting, dog walkers in South Pasadena who are females in this age range and who like playing hockey. It's crazy how granular you can get and how much you can test things at very small budgets, and it's not drop dead simple, but it's not as hard as people think it is. And I was intimidated by it for a long time because I was just like, I gotta log into Facebook and deal with all this, and then I'm gonna start getting people messaging me when I'm on there for the business account, and then I'm gonna have to, look at their cat photos. But it's actually like this insane marketing platform for just for like literally, if you just need to do a quick survey about something, and you want to get testers. There's so many applications for Facebook. I could go on for another half an hour.
Over here.
So your answer here has prompted a question, which isn't the question I have the mic for, but it's just a follow-on to Facebook. Do you have a list on Ranker for the types of people who hate Facebook?
No, but if I didn't have the mic in my hand, I'd be writing that down right now.
Right. So my question is, having started 3 businesses, real world small businesses, not tech businesses before, I feel like I understand what it is to try to make a living on a business that you go in and there's no massive scalability like there is in tech and all that. Can you talk a little bit about the difference, the big middle between the lifestyle businesses and the tech businesses that are designed to scale, that get investors, that are looking for exits and things like that? So the middle part, because I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs in the real world are.
So when you say the middle part, are you talking about businesses that will still need some funding, or is it something that you can really kind of bootstrap?
Well, in the end, most of the ones that succeed end up being bootstraps because nobody wants to invest in a business that hasn't really succeeded.
That's very true.
Right. I was lucky in one of my businesses. I raised money based on shucks and grins and people liking me for a restaurant. But in the end of the day, I wouldn't have invested in me back then. So the businesses that we see every day here are businesses that basically had some value proposition or some mousetrap or some better product that sold enough to pay the bills and grew if management had any talent.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what it's hard to answer that question because I don't know exactly what you're looking for, but the middle is hard in the sense that investors don't care about the middle. And there are rare cases of the middle sort of becoming a thing. Like, people don't realize that, like, Shazam, for example, was around for like 8 or 9 years before it got big piles of investment money. It had gotten some investment dollars, but it wasn't a buzzy thing, and they kind of pivoted their technology to, you can discover a song with an app. So there are cases where the middle then becomes something big. But I think the middle, is still very applicable to like industries like the insurance industry and things where you can there's sort of a set path, restaurants, things that you can just kind of grow organically and say, this one's working, I'm going to open a second restaurant with my cash flow. But I don't know, it's hard for me to sort of answer that question. I have a lot of empathy for both. In fact, I have more empathy, I think, for the small business side because the investment side is so based on hype and BS. At the end of the day, raising money is all about just turning that BS filter on as much as you can. And it's sad, but the reality is that investors are getting pitched. It's like they filter you through the BS lens because they're seeing all this BS. So if you don't turn up your BS, they just assume that you have none of it at all, and then you're completely useless. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Sorry, we just have time for one more.
Okay.
2-part question. The first one is, besides the psychographic information you're talking about, what else are you doing that's on cutting edge to really ramp up that hockey stick even more? And the second question is, it seems like you're international, I don't know, but if you are, do you then kind of adjust your marketing, because each culture is different, and how are you hiring, or how are you getting that to be accurate for your company?
So those are great questions. So we have about 3 or 4 different kind of technology things that we're working on, but I'll talk about one of them. The thing that has most ramped up our growth has been this data-driven approach to Facebook, where when we're doing Facebook posts, we're taking the Ranker Insights data of people who like this, like people who like Guardians of the Galaxy, also like The Rock. And then, we'll post the Guardians of the Galaxy posts, and Facebook nowadays wants you to actually target your posts because, these days only about 3% of Facebook followers will actually see a given post because there's just so much stuff on Facebook. So if you target a subset of your audience within the Facebook post, it's more likely to actually work and then has a chance to become at least somewhat viral. And so we've built, I could go into it, but it'd take like 10 minutes to explain the whole thing, but we basically built some proprietary technology that allows us to really easily target those audiences within Facebook, and that has way hockey sticked it for us. And then the second question about international. So Ranker gets almost 20 million non-US visits a month. Those are to date all English language. So we do kind of do what you're talking about, whereas like, you know, like we got a kid on our social team who's like knows a lot about that thing called soccer, you know, and so you know, we will take the content that works really well in the U.S. We'll take the same framing that we do in the U.S. Framing means like when you're putting a Facebook post up, it's all about the headline, the image. If that stuff doesn't work, nobody will ever click to the article because we all have an attention span of about 1 second when we're scrolling through our Facebook feed, right? And so we'll kind of pick the ones where the framing, hey, that framing would actually work in the UK, so let's just do the same thing and target that UK audience, target that Canada audience, target that Australia audience. We have not translated Ranker yet into other languages, but we're actually kind of set up to do it, and it's on our agenda for probably Q4 of this year, because the coolest thing to me that you could possibly have, and this may not necessarily be the biggest business part of the business, would be if you could be looking at like, you know, best movies of all time, and I could just click a filter that's like Japanese, you know, India here, and just literally see the page changing for all the different cultures and what they like, and, you know, I don't know, that just seems really cool. Yeah. I guess that's probably all I got time for, right?
Did you think of that last thing? You're just on the fly right now? That's not bad.
No, I mean, I've been wanting to do it forever, but it's here's one of the other things. Last thing that kind of sucks about entrepreneurship in a growth kind of environment is a lot of the coolest things that you want to do, you learn aren't necessarily going to move the bottom line as much as, you know, just this other tweak that's immediately going to scale big. And so sometimes you're really balancing like, oh, this is the reason I wanted to do this, and we still haven't gotten to this. But this is going to bring us more quick growth, you know, money and optics and all that stuff. And you choose the quick growth thing, and the devil on your shoulder says, you got to do it, you got to do it, you got to do it. So I'm hoping that in the next year we can get some more of those things that I think are just really awesome, like translating the site.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the questions and the awesome answers.